Hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Saturday, the 6th day of September, 2025. And as usual, we have some important stories to bring to you. So let's get right to them. For the second straight day, after warning, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has struck down a Gaza City high rise it says served the Hamas terror group. This is from the Times of Israel. Netanyahu, in an interview, said he's got a new plan for Gaza, and he explains what voluntary migration really means. This is from the Israeli site JFeed or N12. The United Arab Emirates' public warning against West Bank annexation caught Israel off guard. This is from the Times of Israel. However, from the Jewish news syndicate, Mike Huckabee says the U.S. has never asked Israel not to annex Judea and Samaria. Again, some really important stories, so let's get to them. All right, for the second straight day, after warning the IDF strikes Gaza City high rise, it says serve Hamas terror in the Times of Israel. The army calls on the city residents to flee to a new humanitarian zone. Medical sources in Hamas-run Strip report 21 killed by the IDF. They said 6 dead from malnutrition over the past day. Well, we can't believe a word they say, so we're going to pass on that one. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, on Saturday struck a high rise in Gaza City's Tel al-Hawa neighborhood, less than an hour after publishing urgent evacuation orders for people in and near that building and another Gaza City structure amidst an intensified Israeli operation to take over the city. So, 2 days, two huge high rises. It makes quite a spectacular scene if you've seen any of the pictures of it. The strike, the second to target a high-rise tower in as many days, comes as Israel seeks to pressure Gaza City's million-strong civilian population to leave the area and move to so-called humanitarian zones in southern Gaza. Now, according to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, Hamas operatives had installed surveillance equipment and observation posts in the Al-Susi high-rise to track the IDF movements. They had planted numerous explosive devices nearby to target Israeli troops. The IDF also said the group maintained underground infrastructure adjacent to the site used to direct terror activity. And again, these are really powerful images of a huge high rise being destroyed for a second straight day. Israel does indeed mean business, and it's quite an object lesson for everybody to see what they're going to do. So the high rises there in Gaza City, and again, that's where the main population of Gaza has resided or did reside. They're leaving now, and you're seeing the high rises and these big buildings that are used by Hamas for observation for terror activities are now being crumbled to the ground. All right, headline number two. This is an interview Benjamin Netanyahu did. He's got a new plan for Gaza, and he explains what voluntary migration really means. This is on the Israeli site JFeed or N12. In a new interview, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the duration of the Gaza war, stating he wants it to end quickly, but here comes the but, and this is really key, but that the complex nature of urban warfare against Hamas, combined with a hostage crisis and a wider regional war, requires a methodological approach. In a 34-minute interview with the Israeli telegram channel Abu Ali Express, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the ongoing war in Gaza, stating his desire to end the conflict as quickly as possible. The interview came as the IDF prepares for a broad incursion to Gaza City, and as we've just seen, they're on their way to making that a reality. When asked why the war had lasted so long, it's a good question, fair question. Netanyahu compared it to the battle for Mosul, Iraq. There was a city called Mosul, which dozens of countries went to attack. There were not 30,000 terrorists there, but 3,000. They did not have a tunnel system, he explained. It took 9 months to conquer them. So, of course, Gaza is much more complex. They built a very dense urban system with tens of thousands of terrorists, booby traps, and weapons, and it takes time. He also pointed to the challenges of the hostage crisis, saying, without military pressure, this doesn't happen. And he noted that the war is not limited to Gaza, as Israel is also confronting the Houthis, Syria, and Iran. And let's not forget Hezbollah and Lebanon, too. On the issue of the political situation and the future of Gaza, Netanyahu said the war could end tomorrow if Hamas lays down its arms, returns all the hostages, and you create a security control against any attempt to rebuild terror organizations. He also addressed the possibility of a voluntary migration of Gazans, claiming that polls show at least half of the population wants to leave. I'm told more than 70% actually want to leave. This is not mass expulsion, he clarified, but it can certainly be as a result of people leaving. People want to leave. Just open the gate. He emphasized that a future civilian government must be run by people who do not fund terror. Now, Netanyahu also discussed the possibility of a future peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, stating that it depends upon the elimination of Hamas and the end of the war. He added that in such a situation, he believes there'll be additional opportunities for peace with other countries. When asked about his favorite military operation since the war began, Netanyahu dismissed the question, stating, "You can't love war," and cited the return of hostages as the most moving moments for him. He credited military pressure, and he's absolutely right, for the return of 207 hostages so far, lest we forget. Finally, Netanyahu commented on the broader war with Iran, stating, "We will not tolerate Iran arming itself with nuclear weapons." He took credit for recent strikes against Iranian military leaders and infrastructure, noting that the threat has significantly been pushed back. "Our response depends on them. I don't think they should bring this situation upon themselves," he said. So, Israel is planning to stay the course no matter what the rest of the world says, and that's certainly the right thing they're doing. Again, it's the lesser of evils. It's horrible they have to do this, but literally Hamas has left them no choice. Now, two stories about Netanyahu's statement about possibly annexing the West Bank. First, in the Times of Israel, UAE's public warning against West Bank annexation caught Israel off guard, from the Times of Israel. Now, again, these leftist sites, you take what they say with a grain of salt. We'll read the story and then we'll comment on it. Sharp comments in interview to Times of Israel and official statements were accompanied by back-channel warnings until annexation was taken off the agenda for Thursday cabinet meeting. This is the Washington Post. Again, we don't believe half the stuff they say either. Netanyahu's government was caught off guard by the UAE Emirates' public warning that Israeli annexation of the West Bank was a red line that would spell an end to regional integration, the Washington Post reported Saturday, citing an Israeli official. The Emirates have expressed concerns about annexation before through other channels, but the statement came as a surprise, the unnamed official was quoted as saying. "It's very unusual." The warning was issued by Emirati Special Envoy Lana Nusabeh in an interview with the Times of Israel on Tuesday and a subsequent statement. Further warnings were issued through back channels to the point that annexation was taken off the table. For Netanyahu's Thursday night cabinet meeting, the Post said, citing three people with knowledge of the matter. Now, there's other explanations of that. They said they just didn't get to it, not that it was taken off the table. And it's really none of their business. Judea, Samaria, the so-called West Bank, was given to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by the Lord God himself. See our book, 25 Signs from Near the End, Appendices 5 and 6, where we explain this in detail. Appendix 5, the biblical answer as to the ownership of the promised land, and Appendix 6, who are the Palestinians. And when we understand these two questions and these two issues, then we'll know the land belongs to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, given by God himself, and it's nobody else's land and nobody else's business to try take that land. And finally, Mike Huckabee, God bless him for saying this from the Jewish News Syndicate. He says the U.S. never asked Israel not to annex Judea and Samaria. The American ambassador shot down reports saying the Trump administration asked Jerusalem not to advance sovereignty at this time. U.S. Ambassador to Mike Huckabee speaks in Shiloh in the Benjamin region of Samaria. This was where a statement came as a backdrop of the Hebrew language reports claiming that Washington asked Jerusalem not to advance policies that could cause harm to the stability of the Palestinian Authority. He said, "I have repeatedly said the United States respects Israel as a sovereign state and will not tell Israel what to do." This is also what Secretary of State Rubio just said last week. Channel 14 quoted the American envoy as saying in response to these reports. On Thursday, Netanyahu, we're told, abruptly canceled a cabinet discussion on a plan to annex part of Judea and Samaria. This is Channel 14 reporting. The report provided several reasons for the cancellation, including American pressure not to press forward with this agenda. An unnamed Israeli, I love these unnamed Israeli officials, reportedly said that the meeting was only postponed due to schedule congestion. That may be a more likely answer. The Washington Post reported on Saturday that an unusual message delivered by the UAE had prompted Netanyahu and several senior ministers to remove the annexation plan for the cabinet's agenda. And again, like we just read the previous story, that would be a red line for my government, from the UAE saying that, and it means there can be no lasting peace. Well, there's not going to be any lasting peace. We already know that. And the great majority of the Arab world does not want to see lasting peace between them and Israel. Anyway, the article goes on to say it would foreclose the idea of regional integration and be the death knell of a two-state solution. This is the special envoy of Emirati Foreign Ministry, Anna Nusabeh, told Hebrew and international media on Tuesday. It was reportedly the first time an Emirati official has publicly put under question the Abraham Accords, which the UAE and Bahrain were the first Arab countries to sign on September 15th, 2020. The public message follows several warnings in diplomatic back channels, which were met by silence by the Israeli's Prime Minister office. All right, so, they asked Marco Rubio about it. He said, "What you're seeing with Judea and Samaria and the annexation, that's not a final thing. That's something being discussed among some elements of Israeli politics." And Rubio said, "I'm not going to opine on that today." He went on to say that Washington has harsh words for world leaders who have said they plan to recognize an independent Palestinian state. We told all these countries, if you guys do this recognition stuff, it's all fake. It's not even real, he told reporters during his diplomatic visit to Quito, Ecuador. If you do it, you're going to create really big problems. It is indeed Israel's business and theirs alone. So we'll see here. There have been a number of other articles that saying, it isn't the business of the UAE. And anyway, the UAE needs Israel more than Israel needs them. And so they can say what they want, but it's Israel's territory given by God himself. So we'll see what happens. Again, Israel's got to choose what to do with their own future, with their own security, what's best for them. And it's good to see they're getting the show on the road into Gaza. It's the knocking down of these two giant high rises shows much more to come. So we'll be keeping you posted every single day on what's going on here. Again, check out our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World. Under the heading of Bible prophecy, in particular, the appendices 5 and 6, looking at this whole story of whose land is it? What does the Bible say? And the Bible is very clear on this. And this is where we got to start and finish with what Scripture says. And then we find out who the Palestinians are. And they're not a real people. They've come from all over the Middle East. They're not, Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, was born in Egypt. So they're not indigenous to the promised land by any way, shape, or form. Anyway, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.